back, it's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we're going to talk about how to draw a light beam. So, let's get arting. So let's see if we add some light coming in. How that might work. Contrasts nicely with a different direction. So right, you want to block it off, so I don't want where the fingers are, the light to come through. I also want it brighter, so it's easier to start layering it up gently and then really adding in pin pressure to brighten it up once I sort of block it in. And see how it goes. I really want to make sure that, the lines are pretty harsh. On a light beam, when you have a beam like this and you have something blocking it, you would have these really harsh shadows coming off of it. That's what's going to create that light beam effect. And so I really want to make sure that's clear. And I'll be adding some light in front of the hands as well, but right now I need to block in the first hand and then, kind of go from there as I build it up. And now I'm adding in through the fingers, right? I'm adding some of that light through the fingers. And the way it's going to work is I'm going to have some gaps through the fingers. That's how it's going to create the effect. But I need to follow the line of the light beam. And you can see I'm gapping it here and have it come down. That'll make it look more like a light beam as it comes down and I thicken it up. Now I'm already adding some of the light in front of the hand. I don't want to put too much because I don't want it too washed out. I want to still be able to see that it's a hand, but it would be coming in front of the hand, so I need that glow to be in front of it as it sort of spreads out. As I bring it down, and I'll add it in front of some of the others as well. And now I'm adding it in front of that sort of top hand. And I'll add it through the fingers too, right? That's really, really going to help make it seem like it's a light beam by adding these really sharp bursts of light through the fingers, through gaps, through, other things like this. It'll help, and then sort of layering up the color. I won't be able to do all of it until I sketch in the figures and really see how the light is working on it, how it all kind of plays together. And then I also need to be mindful of the direction of the light, even through their fingers, right? Like, how are these hands catching the light? How would the light coming in that direction create that sort of effect? And so that's what I'm doing. And then spreading the light out over the figures, because they'd all kind of be in a glow. So making sure that you have these little bits of light coming in. It's not a lot, right? I'm not putting a ton of pin pressure here. And I'm not putting a ton of lines. They're very sparse. But it's enough that, you see the effect. You can kind of look at it and it looks like light is coming over them. This sort of harsh beam is coming over them. And to create the sense of glow, I'm actually going to come off of this with highlight that goes further and further away, right? Like I sparse out the lines more and more. It should create this sense of glowing on both sides. Want to follow the edge of the light that's already been established as I do it. And then as I, add highlights to their faces, I'm also going to, try to also to mimic this blocked light as well, right? Like, as they're all reaching for it, you want the shadows to reflect where the light would be blocked. And now adding the light on, the fingers themselves and creating that nice burst. That's really what's going to work. It's not only going to really help illuminate the figure, which is important, it's also going to sell the effect of the light beam. Without the highlights on their hands, it wouldn't really work. But still being mindful of how the light beam would cast highlights and shadows on the hand itself, right? So like the pinky's fully in highlight, but the rest of the fingers are kind of in silhouette. And then it's splashing over a little bit on the thumb and the palm of the hand, but otherwise, mostly silhouette. And then, of course, any other bulges, so like the clothing or any other area that sort of bulges out, would also be catching the light. So just being mindful of where there's a bulge and adding in, a highlight for it. As I mentioned already before, with the hands, you're just sort of doing it as a silhouette, right? It's not very hard to do. It's just sort of this really bright color that you're just sort of lightly putting on there. I don't have to put a ton of pin pressure to fill it in. I obviously want it to be a nice bursted light, but because the hands are so small, it has that effect. And now against the face, the face would be catching light. Again, it's really good to help highlight your figure, but also shadowing it and highlighting it in a way that makes sense. So making sure, that there's gaps on the face itself. And you can see I just erased the section on the nose. So leaving like little spots on the face that aren't in full highlight, even though he's looking up at the light, is also going to help sell the light beam. It's going to be those highlights and shadows on his face where there's gaps, where the hands are sort of blocking out sections, that are really going to help create that illusion and really sell that it's a light beam coming down. And then, having another gap here and a section on his cheek. So I'm trying to follow the light beams, which is what I was doing. The light beams I've already created, sort of following those down and figuring out where they would hit to create the effect. And his lips are going to be in highlight, and his chin a little bit. And now just really, making sure that's nice and gapped and filled in. And you can see that I think that really helped. Gently bridging it. Yeah, you can kind of look back and see that that's working. And then the eyes, as he's looking up at the, the strong, harsh light. The eyes are always so important in a composition. Now I'm just bringing it down the side, right? As the light comes down, it's splashing over the sides of his face and coming down a bit. That'll help, continue the light beam down so that it really is highlighting it. And then his hair, of course, should be. Now, as the light is rounding away, as the figures are rounding away from the light source, you're going to have it go back into shadow. His head's a little bit more in highlight because, he's the way he's turned, but still following the same rule like I did with the other figure, making sure that there's going to be gaps, but also showing their expressions. Like, that's important. When you're deciding a light source, it's important to figure out what's going to highlight your composition the best. And in this case, what's really doing it is the light beam. That's what's making all of it pop. So I need to make sure that, what I've drawn is clear, and the light beam is how I'm going to do it, even with the gaps as the light sort of blocked out, being mindful of how that's all working together to make sure that my subject is very clear, that the expressions are clear, but that the light is doing the right thing. And on this figure, right, like, he's turned away from us now, so it's going to be mostly in silhouette, but his head is, of course, turned towards the light, so he's catching a little bit more of the light as it's slowly rounding away, and then his face is turned towards the light as well, so that's going to get some light. But otherwise, it's more silhouette. And as the figures are further and further back, the less light is going to be hitting them. So they're going to have more shadows, like the bottom half of his face is in shadow. And the same is true for this guy, right? Only his eyes. He's peeking through a whole bunch of figures. So really, only his eyes are going to be what's in highlight as it catches his eyes, and then a little bit of his hair. So I had turned off the recording, and I forgot to record drawing in the highlight on the first hand, but that's also part of it, is I'm going to add this highlight on all of the hands, and it's just following that contour. The hands are mostly going to be in kind of a silhouette with only marginal details on the back of them. Yeah, so we're just adding that in as the light would come to the edge and highlight that out. Now what's cool about doing it this way too, right, is I'm putting the same amount of pressure and the same amount of line thickness to all of the hands, but as the hands get smaller, as they get closer towards that light source, they're going to appear brighter because they're smaller, and the brush size is staying the same. But that creates an interesting effect because they're brighter or closer to that glow that's coming in. So I think that actually is really effective, and it just kind of helps make it work. Also makes the hands look almost like they're see-through, like when you're holding up to a light, because of that red color. And I'm just, refining some details on the faces, in the light beam, on the details in the clothing, all the little things to help finish it out. And I'm tapering out the glow here. I'm sort of making it a bigger glow, more of that blur, to create more of that sort of glowed effect. Alright, so that is how you draw a light beam. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.